introduce our guest. Storyteller and stand-up comedian Sydney Davis first relocated to Chicago at the age of 16 to pursue a career in comedy, where she began studying at the Second City. She is currently a faculty member at the Second City Training Center virtually and at the Third Coast Comedy Club in person. Between them, she teaches stand up comedy, storytelling, and public speaking classes. She also developed the curriculum currently in use at the SCTC for storytelling 1 and 2, stand up 1, 2, and 3, and public speaking 101. Sydney is the host and producer of the podcast Growing Up Fundy, a podcast analyzing the true life experiences of everyday people who grew up fundamentalist, Orthodox, or involved in any other forms of strictly religious environments, and the impacts, both positive and negative, that these upbringings have had on their lives. And she is a founding member of the Conversation Coalition, a group of 4 atheists and 4 Christians who host live discussion events in and around Nashville, Tennessee. That is a pretty impressive resume. Sydney, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. We are excited to have you. Go ahead and unmute
Perfect.
whenever you're
Thanks for
ready.
having me. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
stoked to be here. Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to it.
Yes, we have too. I love your program. I, of course, follow you on your podcast on Growing Up Fundy.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yes.
much. Yeah, what a lot of people don't know is that I have a comedy background, I have a storytelling background, but I'm also a professional debater. I've been debating since 2010. I started when I was in college, and that was actually how I paid my way through college, and I have never stopped I've just never stopped arguing with people ever since then. Um,
I didn't realize
but
that you did that to work your way through school.
I did for many years, and then I kept going. So the cool thing about debate is that
Hmm.
you can do novice and varsity in school, but then you can continue after you graduate as professional level. So when you say you're a professional debater, that doesn't mean that's like my full-time job. It means that I debate on a professional level. So I can go to tournaments and I can debate lawyers, I can debate doctors, I can debate coaches. Debate coaches still participate on occasion. And so if you're like a lawyer full time, you can just go back and debate anytime you want if you reached professional level.
Did not realize that.
Hmm.
Yeah, we learn a
Pretty
lot
cool.
on this program. I
I
kind of
learned
like
something
it.
new today. I can check that off.
That's cool. And so I bet, Sydney, you're going to tell us that formal debate is the best way to change people's mind on a topic, right?
No. Meow, 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 meow.
What?
Yeah, absolutely not. No. Do you mind if I just go ahead and
Yeah,
launch into
go
the
ahead, hop in,
Okay.
tell us more
Perfect.
with that hook. We need to know more.
Yeah, so obviously I love debate, right? I love public speaking, I love debate, I love discussions, I love an engaging conversation where especially when it's between you and somebody who believes or agrees with the complete opposite of what you do. And one of my favorite things about being involved in debate was the particular style that I was involved in was called IPDA, and basically that is fancy for in the moment, they tell you what side you're on and what the topic is. In the moment, they tell you about an hour before the debate begins. So you have to spend the next hour researching as though whatever side of whatever topic that you didn't get to pick is like that is a hill you're willing to die on. And one of my favorite parts of that style of debate was learning one, how much of what I thought I believed actually wasn't what I believed at all. Two, even if I stayed after the round, even if I stayed for who I was, right, at the end there, I still learned something. It gave me a lot of empathy towards ideas that I didn't necessarily agree with, or again, even if I still thought the opposing side that I was having to argue with for the sake of that round, um, even if I still totally disagreed with it, it at least forced me to look up legitimate sources from, I couldn't just go on and, oh, like Sky Cloud at iCloud says, like, you had to check your sources, you had to check where you were getting this information from. It was a very valuable skill. So I want to say that the skill of a debate is invaluable. To be able to have those kinds of debates, those I guess skills and talents that you need to do that, that is not what I'm saying is the harmful aspect. That is actually entirely invaluable and is actually how I found out that I was an atheist Democrat as opposed to a Baptist Republican. Give it up for former Sydney, former life. Um, But that being said, it was never the arguments in round that changed my mind, and I wanna dive in a little bit towards that. So, something that I've noticed since then, I was actively debating the majority of the time in my early 20s and my mid 20s, but now I'm in my early 30s. You guys are like, "What? You don't look a day over 21." Thank you. Thank you. Water and SPF. Um, is I started to notice that there was a pattern between the debates and the conversations that were going on. And something I noticed in between the novice and varsity level debaters and the professional debaters were the people who went in and had a debate versus the people that went in and had a conversation. And I always wondered, what was it that made these professional level debates so entertaining, so engaging, and most importantly, why they were so thought provoking. While everybody else was doing the exact same thing, they were following the same rules, they were given the same topics. But what was it about the pro debaters that had one, the room would fill with people, right? Nobody in their right mind would watch a novice debate. You've got the judge and you've got the two people participating, and even those three people wish they were not there the majority of the time. It is rough. The timekeeper is falling asleep. But why was it then that when the professional level debates had their moment, the room was packed. People were fist bumping, people were high fiving. And when, say, the round is over and everybody leaves the room, they go into the hallway, the conversations would often keep going. Whereas in a novice or a varsity debate, you would either just walk in totally different directions and just be disgusted, or you would pretend to have decorum for like 5 minutes, like, good game, and then you would go and just, bitch about them wherever you were going to, where your team was preparing. The professional debates, the conversation would continue. They would stand there, they would answer people's questions. Even when you would see novice debaters come up and try, "Well, how about this point?" They would answer that point very like, you could tell that these people took no personal vendetta, no there was no emotion, I said not in motion, emotion involved in the topic at hand, even though I knew for a fact, because I knew these people personally, they did care about these topics on an emotional level. And I've always wondered, especially at that age before I reached pro, I was like, what is it that they're doing? What is the difference? And I wanted to talk a little bit about that here because I think it is so important to know the difference. Because also, those are the types of debates that will help you the most in real life. That's something very important to distinguish as well. I think we've all watched presidential debates, right? We've all watched televised debates. We've all watched debates between famous people or literary people or political people. For whatever reason, everybody loves a good debate. But how many times have we gone into that debate not already deciding what side we're going to be on and simply watching to watch that side do well or to see what that side decides to say, whether it's a celebrity, somebody we look up to? Many, many times when we are engaging with this content, it's because either outwardly or inwardly, we've already kind of decided what it is we think, right? I have yet, and feel free to put in the chat if you disagree with this. I have yet to meet anyone who has watched a presidential debate and changed sides. In fact, I would argue that most of the people who watch the presidential debates are so solid in which side they already agree on that you could say literally anything. I had a teacher once that said Hannah Montana could get up and speak for the Republican Party and his wife would still vote Republican. It didn't matter what she said, she could just sing a song, right? He said that about his own wife. I'm not saying that about her. He said that. But what I'm saying is many times when we tune into this content, even if we're not 100% sure that's why we're doing it, we have oftentimes decided why we are there, right? I would presume, and again, correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, a lot of the people who are here are considering deconstructing, have thought about deconstructing, have looked into deconstructing, even if you're not there, even if you wouldn't say that you've deconstructed, the word is not a foreign word to you very much, most likely. Or maybe you're here because you are religious, but you're very curious about what people who are deconstructing from religion are thinking. The idea though is that you've looked into this content. You didn't trip and fall into this Zoom and are like, what is this? What's going on?" Right? And if you have, welcome. If you don't know why you're here, join the party. Um, so it's easy for us to say, right? "Oh, I watched your debate," like maybe you're talking to an atheist, maybe you're talking to RnRa, or you're talking to somebody like Matt Dillahunty, and you're saying, "I watched your debate, and what you said was so powerful that I decided in that moment I'm an atheist." I'm willing to bet that you very likely had at least dipped your toe in the idea of no longer being a religious person before you clicked on that link, right? YouTube has algorithms, Instagram has algorithms, social media has a way of showing us what it knows we're looking for, right? So it is very rare that we stumble upon this content when we didn't at least look into it once, right? We didn't at least have somewhat of an idea in the back of our minds that this was a topic we were interested in. Now, why am I bringing this up? One of the first things that people talk about becoming familiar with when they're first, maybe it's deconstructing, maybe it's leaving their religion, maybe it's contemplating changing religions, is they look up this content online and they come across debates, right? Those are the debates that get the most views. Atheist destroys Christian, Christian destroys atheist. There's that inflammatory topic, that inflammatory title. There's usually a thumbnail where one member of one of the sides is made to look more ridiculous than the other, right? Maybe some chins are enhanced, something like that. And a lot of times those are entertaining, but are they helpful? Are they genuine research content for someone interested in exploring a different side? Are they something that might make somebody change their mind, not in a way where they just feel stupid if they don't, right? Like, well, obviously I have to say this because this video made me feel like I'm stupid if I don't agree. We want to have conversations. We're talking about our day to day conversations that you and I have that these higher level individuals don't always have to have, either because their family and friends are tired of trying to have that conversation. They already know what their thoughts are, right? There's a million videos they can watch of their cousin, doing a debate. But when it comes to people like us grouped here, it is oftentimes the day-to-day conversation when we find ourselves engaged in debates. A lot of times it wasn't our intent. A lot of times we get cornered or we get asked something or it gets posted on our Facebook or in the comments. So how do we navigate these conversations and these debates in a realistic day-to-day way? Will you ever be in a position where you're at a podium with a microphone in front of an audience that people bought tickets to talking about atheism? Probably not. Probably, you know what? I say that, but I literally did that at the University of St. Louis like a month ago. But like statistically, probably not. And if you are, please send me a video. I'd love to see how it went. So how do we engage in these conversations with real people? And when I say real people, I mean everyday, day to day conversations that you are or are not prepared for. And we say, we want to have a conversation, right? We want to have a conversation. We don't want to go in determined to change someone's mind, but we do want to show them a lot of what they need in order to potentially change their mind if that's what they're going to end up doing. So let me back up a little bit. For starters, we never want to go into these conversations determined to change somebody's mind because that's not going to happen. The minute they can smell all over you that your goal is to change their mind, to be fair, I don't think that's any different than people who proselytize, right? None of us enjoy being proselytized to. None of us enjoy being cornered in moments where we least expect and talked to about whether it's the word of God, whether it's anything like that, depending on why you're here. Nobody likes to be proselytized to, and that includes atheism. Still proselytization, even if it's about the absence of religion, right? Agnosticism, skepticism. I'm not even saying you have to be an atheist only. Like any of those titles, nobody likes to be preached at, even if it's about the absence of religion. Now, sometimes these people start the conversation first. You're like, I was minding my own business, eating my sandwich when my aunt got nosy, right? Absolutely. It happens. It happens more often than not. Um, so, this is how we want to approach these conversations. The idea is you know your stance, you know what you believe. You are very likely going to be the same person when you walk away. But when these people engage in this conversation with you, there's a chance that they might not be. So it's important that we approach these conversations, these debates, with a level of compassion that there is a chance someone might be asking you these questions because they're thinking them and they think if they ask you, it takes the burden off them. But I wasn't wondering if God was real. I was just curious why you don't think God's real. When in the back of their mind, maybe they're struggling with that idea. Maybe they're asking themselves questions. So for starters, why are they asking you this question? Sure, they might just be trying to pick a fight. But chances are there's a reason they're asking you about this, and maybe they don't even know what that reason is yet. Right? Maybe they're not even sure. They just heard or found out or knew already that you weren't a religious person and something inside of them got stirred up and they couldn't stay quiet about it anymore, right? Now, in a dream scenario, that's when a debate would begin, right? And you'd be like, facts, evidence, facts. And they'd be like, feelings. And you're like, facts and evidence. And then you would just like destroy them and it would go viral on YouTube. But what's going to happen is you're just going to be known as an asshole. That's what's going to happen in that scenario. And nobody wants to be the asshole, right? Not if you don't have to. Some of us can't help it. But, if you have a choice, that's probably not how you want to be, especially if it's like Thanksgiving or Christmas. So, first, don't plan on changing their mind. Welcome the idea, give them the thoughts, comments, things to think about, but don't go in with them knowing you are trying to change their mind. Also, don't get smug. Even if you're really crushing it, don't get smug. I can tell you from personal experience, nothing kept me Christian longer than a smug atheist. When they would say something and smirk, and I knew I was being made fun of somehow, but I wasn't sure how, boy, did I go back to church a lot longer, right? Because that didn't work. I felt weird, I felt embarrassed, I felt encroached upon, and it was not helpful for either of us, right? Now that person probably went home thinking like, "Oh, I feel great about myself. Got another one." Right? But obviously that person's, even though they probably would say their goal is to lead people out of fundamentalist religions, I'm willing to bet it's not. They are focused on a winner and a loser, and that's not what we want. We also don't want a winner and a loser. Something else that's really important about engaging in these conversations with people is you are very likely not going to see the outcome of their decision. They're going to take the conversation they had with you and they're going to think about it and they're going to reflect on it and they're going to look up some of the things that they heard or that they saw or that you pointed out or that you asked. And it might be a day, a week, a month, a year, friends. That it might be a long time before the actual weight of that conversation takes effect. And I feel like many of us have been there as well, right? Where we saw a video and that video didn't change our mind, but it did ask a good question. And we thought about that question and it kind of spooked us a little bit. And maybe we stepped away, right? Maybe we fled and hid in our comfort squares, whether it was with family or friends or at church or whatever, our hometown. And then that idea comes back some other way. Maybe it's another video, right? Maybe it's another thing. If you put away the idea that you get to see the fruit of your labor in that moment by winning, it changes the game. It changes the game for you. And then something else that's really important about these conversations is this is going to sound like a no-brainer, but remaining calm, words cannot hurt you. Their thoughts and opinions cannot hurt you. You will be fine. Take yourself to Taco Bell afterwards, right? Like, you'll be okay. You'll go home maybe thinking about that conversation a little bit, maybe being like, oh, that was really irritating, but that's it. This other person, however, might have a lot more to think about and a lot more to consider when having these conversations. So, just to kind of reflect a little bit, we talked a little bit about compassion, right? Understanding that they're asking you to ask you, but why are they really asking you this? Right? Is it because they're a little bit scared of the idea? Maybe they're a very religious person and they're just a little bit scared of losing people to your ideas. Why are they afraid of that? They wouldn't be afraid of it if it wasn't happening, right? Maybe they lost somebody close to them to that idea. Maybe somebody they really care about keeps talking about it. Maybe they themselves are the ones having those thoughts in their head. But again, if they project it onto you, like, I wasn't asking that question, I was just asking them that question. Like, not me. I don't think that. I don't. Maybe they're just a little bit curious about what you're going to say. Maybe they have ideas about what the answer to that question would be, and they're curious to see if you would say the same thing, right? Because maybe that validates something they've been feeling for a while, which can be even scarier, right? And make somebody debate you even more aggressively. But you gain nothing letting people see your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions come out in like a rage moment. However, they might gain a lot more by you not losing your cool, by you remaining calm. When I'm having a conversation with the Conversation Coalition, we specifically called ourselves that because we are live debates, quote unquote, between Christians and atheists, but we never allow it to get aggressive. We ask hard-hitting questions. We don't hold back. We have a Q&A moment where anyone from the audience can ask anything they want to either of our speakers right there. But the main takeaway is that we want to make sure we've had the conversation. We've allowed each side to talk. We've allowed each side to answer the question. We've allowed the audience to ask specific speakers specific questions they had. We've forced each side, both agnostic and Christian, to support what they say. So if they say something, they're allowed to be cross examined. They're allowed to be asked questions at any point, and they can't just say, "Well, I don't have enough time to talk to you about that." We'll make sure you have enough time to answer that question, right? So that's why I keep calling it a conversation, because debate implies that there's a winner and a loser. And if you go into these scenarios planning to have a winner or a loser, neither one of you will admit that you were the loser. Nobody will admit it. Everybody will leave being like, well, I thought I did a great job, so I'm not going to change my mind. As opposed to having a conversation that allows for thought and questioning. Also, when you open yourself up to questioning, it scares people. When you're like, "So what questions do you have?" Like, I'm happy to answer any of them. That scares people way more than, "Come at me, like, I'm that big, bad, non-religious person. I dare you." People act way more afraid of me when I am just sitting here being like, "So, what are we talking about?" They're like, "Oh, no. Oh, no. I thought she was gonna be aggressive, and I was just gonna use that as my argument tactic. She's yelling, she's yelling, she's yelling, but she's not yelling, so now what am I gonna do? Now what am I gonna say? I can't default to my usual, like, "Oh, that lady's getting emotional. Gotta stop the conversation." Oh, no, but she's not, because I don't have feelings or emotions, ladies and gentlemen. Just kidding. I have them somewhere. But, so that's kind of the general idea that we're going with here is you want to be, even when you're taken by surprise, you want to be willing to have that conversation. You want to be willing to answer their questions. A lot of times, the questions will be the same. If I had a nickel for every time somebody asked me about morals, being an atheist, I would be rich. I would be rich, right? If I had a nickel for every time I asked somebody asked me what I thought happens after we die, and then they were like, "Oh, so you think it's a conscious blackness?" No, it's nothing. I think it's literally nothing. "Oh, so you just wander around in the black?" No, literally, there is no wandering to be had. It is lights out. I would be rich. I would be rich, but that's okay. That's okay. That is perfectly okay. If anything, it's just practice to get your answer down better and better and better because, "Oh, everybody asked that question." Yeah, everybody has that question, and they're going to somebody to get an answer. So it might as well be somebody like you who's willing to give them that answer because who loves to give answers to questions? People who want you to come to their church. They love to invite you to get your questions answered. They love to give you literature, come, you know what, if you come on Thursday, we'll feed you lunch, we'll have a Q&A, we'll let you shake hands with the pastor. So, do you want to be the non-religious equivalent to that person? Do you want to be able to say, "Hey, yeah, here's my card. Text me if you got a question. Here's my email to follow up. If it's a family member, hit me up on Facebook. Oh, I blocked you. I'll unblock you. Then you can hit me up on Facebook. Then I'll block you again. Just kidding. I don't have Facebook anymore. Email me." Um, you want to be open, because not only is being closed off not a very good way to communicate with people, but it gives them no place to go except the people that are way too open and willing to invite them to bada bing, you're in a cult. Right? Like, that's how fast that happens. You got a question, one person won't answer it, one person will answer it, and they have casserole. Then you're in a cult. Ask me how I know. Ask me. It's because I was in a cult. Anyway, that's a long story.
Did they have good casserole?
They did. They did. To date. To date. And miss me with that banana bread. Y'all ever had Baptist
Ooh.
banana bread? That
Yes.
stuff's delicious. That kept me Christian for so long. Anyway, that's beside the point. Feel free to ask me for the recipe afterward. I don't remember it, but I'll make something up. It'll sound
I
convincing.
want to know.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Um, so those are some important things. It is always, you always want to see the fruits of your labor, right? Everybody wants to see that moment somebody's like brain stops working and you can see the cogs reversing and they're like, "Oh no." But they don't want to show you that. Right? They don't want to show you that. That's something they're going to take with them. Give it to them in a to-go box. Let them take it home and think about it. In fact, if you when you're having these conversations, if you encourage people to keep in touch with you, if they have more questions or if they wanna talk about it again or if they wanna give you a call, yada, yada. If if that's not what they're interested in, they won't. If it is what they're interested in, they need to talk to somebody, right? If they've already decided, "Nope, I'm gonna be a Christian for life," or "I'm gonna be whatever," and whatever it is, the idea is that they're trying to get across to you, "I'm gonna be this for the rest of my life, and there's nothing you can do to change their mind," they're not going to call you. But if they do have more questions and they do have more things they're curious about that they're afraid to ask you face to face, they will reach out to someone. So why not start with you? Also, there's nothing more disarming, in my opinion, as someone who you, as the question asker, jump on them, you corner them. You're like, "Oh, yeah, well, if you don't need a religion, then what about this?" And that person's like, "Hey, here's all additional ways to contact me." Right? You're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." You know how, like, whenever they come up to your door with the Bibles, you're like, "Whoa, you're too excited about this. What's going on here?" Right? The one time that I took a Bible from somebody, they were, like, afraid to give it to me. They were like, "Whoa, sorry. Usually people tell us to F off and go away. We didn't actually bring any Bibles. I'm so sorry. Let me go get one." I'm just kidding. They didn't say that, but I like to think they thought that. Um, they acted scared, right? So be the person that people are both nervous to talk to because you seem way too invested and interested in talking to them, but also the first person they go to because they know they're not going to get yelled at, they're not going to get embarrassed, they're not going to be called incompetent, right? Especially if you can throw a couple of self jabs in there. Right. Especially if you can self deprecate a little bit just to bring the mood down. Right. I always like to talk about my, oh, by the way, answer to the question, fake eyebrows. My eyebrows are fake. Meow, meow, meow. They're not AI though. They're Maybelline or something like that. I think they're some Maybelline like long wear pencil. I don't know. They don't last that long though. When it rains, they're gone.
So the not sure people got it right.
They got it right. Yeah.
Hey, should we
Maybe
share those poll results while we're on the topic?
that would be great. Yeah.
Ooh, okay. So I think the not sure's had it. Let's pull it up though. Let's see. That was the important question. 30% of people thought they were real. 9% said AI, and 61% were not so sure. So
Those are the
they got it.
skeptics.
Those are the skeptics. Welcome, skeptics. You're in the
Yes.
right place.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love it.
Perfect.
Speaking of poll questions, has a debate ever changed your mind? 13% of people said their mind was changed by a debate they participated in. 39% by a debate they listened to. And I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when you were talking about who's our audience here. people that may have been listening to debates.
Yes, yes.
And 13% said no, never, and 35%, not really sure. So,
Yeah. And I would also like to, I mean, we not literally do this, but I would be curious if you would answer the same way if the question was, had a debate about a topic that, say, for example, you hadn't been thinking about or you hadn't been considering, changed your mind all the way, right?
mhm.
So maybe you're on the fence. Maybe you're like, I'm not sure. Maybe that debate changed your mind. But if, say, as an evangelical, you were to hear that debate, would that still change your mind? Or would that bring you a little bit closer to what you eventually needed to hear? I would be curious to see those statistics because I think some people maybe just I know at least one person who all it took was one question from her son
Mm-mm.
to make her go from evangelical to just full-blown atheist. And I know some people who, like myself, listened to those debates for years and years and years and years. And because I felt so attacked, I hid in my Christianity until I felt like it was safe and quiet to come out. And then that's when I started really doing the research. And it's funny because now I'm good friends with a lot of those people that I saw in those like scary debate videos. And I'm like, hey, you scared me like 10 years ago. This is great. Um, so something to consider. Also, when we have conversations with people, we are offering them alternative ideas. And a lot of times, these are not new alternative ideas to them, but the way that the idea is being presented to them is new, right? So, yes, every Christian has heard everything you can possibly say about, well, what about this? What about this? What about that statistic? What about this? What about evolution? What about, they've heard it. They've
Mhm.
literally had Sunday school, I was about to say episodes. They've literally had Sunday school gatherings about how to answer those questions, right? Whether or not they were taught well as a debate coach, I don't think so, but that's, coming from it objectively. However, they've heard it. They've heard it. They've heard it. They've heard it. However, what they haven't heard is the opportunity for them to speak about it, the opportunity for them to give their side of the conversation. They haven't heard that. They haven't heard of, say, agnostics or atheists or skeptics saying, I'm giving you the floor for a couple of minutes and I'm not going to interrupt you unless it's with a question about what you've just told me. Ask them questions about what they're saying. Sometimes changing someone's mind only involves repeating back to them what they said. And not even in a sarcastic way, not even like, "This is what you sound like." More like like, "Oh, this is what I believe." "Okay, so you believe that this is what happened." And they're like, well, I don't know." That alone is a mind change. That alone is one step further than they were before that conversation started, right? "Oh, you don't know? Okay, cool, you don't know." I back away from the topic for a moment. Then obviously my mind is spinning with questions. I bring up something else. I'm like, "Tell me about it." They're like, "Well, I believe this and that and the other." You repeat back. "Okay, so you're saying that God would do this or Jesus would." "Well, I mean, I don't know." And you're like, boom, there it is, right? Okay, interesting. I have so much respect for someone who says they don't know. I have so much more respect, I should say, than people who they double down and that's their answer. Then guess what? 10 minutes later, the conversation's going. You can say, "Hey, circling back to that thing you said earlier." And then you ask them the next question, right? It's not they say this and you pepper, 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 pepper. Gotcha. It's introduce the idea. Make them realize they don't know. They're not sure. Move on to the next thing. Make them realize they are not sure. They don't know. And you're like, okay, respect. Maybe a follow-up question. Got it. Just wanna make sure I understand what you're saying. I always say that. I just wanna clarify that I'm not misspeaking, and if I'm repeating this back and it doesn't sound right, correct me. And then circle back to that first thing that they didn't know about. Something else I've learned works really well with people is when you frame every question as though the internet is asking, right? I am the nosiest person you will ever meet. But if I tell people, "Well, I wanna know this, well, I wanna know that," they get defensive and they don't answer it. But if you say, "Great, I totally understand. Kara, whatever it is that you just said, totally get it. What would you say if someone were to ask this? And then you ask the question that literally only you are asking, but you make it sound like all the forums, right? One of my go-to lines is, I spend a lot of time on Reddit, and something I've seen a lot of people ask is a question only I care about. Nobody else has asked that question. But now it's not you versus me, it's us versus the internet. What are you going to tell the internet? What would you say to the conglomerate of people that is the web, right? They will be so much more honest and upfront about their answers if they think they're proving an invisible, non-existent person wrong, as opposed to the person standing in front of their face. So you're like, hey, we disagree on things. That's cool. You came up to me, you're asking me questions. I'm telling you my thoughts. I'm listening to your thoughts. I feel like we've all had that experience where we're talking to somebody and we can already tell they're not listening. They're just generating more questions in their mind. Literally listen, because you will catch things that don't make sense in what they're saying. But you can't catch those things, those relevant things to that person, those relevant things that matter to that person, if you're too busy thinking of a question you heard on a debate once that just really got him, man. It killed that debate. So I'm going to introduce it today at Thanksgiving. It's like it's not going to work. I promise you. It's not going to work in the dairy aisle at Walmart. And even if it does, nobody will be there to see it. They won't save it, right? But if you listen to what they're saying, you say, okay, for example, I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and they were like, I think that if you find a religion that suits you best, that religion was meant for you. They said, in their mind, the way that it works is you are born and will eventually gravitate to a religion, a belief system, even agnostic or atheist. And that was your predestined religion. And that was the religion that you were supposed to follow. And I said, okay, interesting. So, and I repeated back. I said, so what you're saying is all of us were meant to serve a specific religion. And those are the religions that we were predestined to follow. And this person was like, yes. I'm like, what about the amendments that are made to these religions year to year? For example, lots of people joined Catholicism before the Pope came out and said gay marriage is okay. If you don't agree with that, you've always been a part of the Catholicism that said gay marriage is not okay, divorce is not okay. The Pope comes out and says 40 years into your career as a Catholic, gay marriage is okay, divorce is okay. What do? Were you still supposed to be part of that religion? Were you predestined to have to change your mind and come to this new thought process? Are you supposed to be that old kind of Catholic, not this new kind of Catholic? Are the new kind of Catholics the bad kind of Catholics? And if they are, how can you tell when you're like, how can you tell which beliefs belong to the right Catholics versus the wrong Catholics? And then we talked about religious violence. And I said, what do you do if your religion determines that you should kill other members of a different religion? Are you allowed to say no to that? Are you allowed to change religions? And then if you do, say, for example, you were predetermined to be a member of the Nation of Islam, and at some point in your life, you convert to Judaism, are you now going to the original hell that you were supposed to go to? And this person did not know, which is great. But they'd been going around saying this idea for years and years and years, and nobody had questioned it. People had argued about it. People had said, well, I think that's stupid because this and that and the other. But nobody had said, now I have some questions. Maybe you know the answer right now, maybe you don't. What about this scenario? What if someone were to say this? What if someone were to say that? And we had an extended conversation about this topic. It was interesting. I truly thought it was interesting. I don't agree with any of it, but I was like, oh, this is a perspective that in all of my years of being an atheist, talking about being an atheist, joining events. I had never heard someone present that idea. Maybe you have. I had not. I had never heard that. That whole everybody's predetermined to a religion and that's the one that you're assigned to. It's almost Calvinism. Almost. Not quite, but it's like a Calvinist type idea that you're predetermined to be something, right? And so that person I still consider a friend. They're local. They do things here in my town, and if I showed up to one of their events, no harm, no foul, even though we completely disagree on that aspect. And I know they went home and they thought about it because one, because they literally said, you know, I'm gonna have to go home and think about that. But two, because I wasn't, well, here's all the reasons why that's dumb. Here's all the reasons why that's wrong. Here's a bunch of articles you won't read, but I feel good about myself for having them saved on my phone that I'm going to spam you with. I'm going to keep sending them to you over the course of this week, and you're not going to open any of them and you're not going to read them because they won't. They won't. Do you see what I'm saying? If somebody's mind is truly changing, they have already been looking into those things. If somebody's mind is determined to never change, they will not open those links. They won't watch those videos. They won't read those articles, if that makes sense. So if you feel like you're making an impact, a positive impact, and you feel like this person is actually interested in what you have to say, send those links because that's the person who's looking for those things. Just like they were looking for you. They sought you out to have this conversation, whether it's at a dinner party, whether it's wherever. Maybe you were wearing a shirt and they were curious about it and they started talking about it, right? Maybe your shirt was a humanist shirt or an atheist shirt or whatever. Those are the people that will open those links, but you can send, trust me, my dad does this all the time. You can send people links that tout your opinion all day long and they will not open them. They'll do what I do. They'll laugh, react. They'll give it a heart and they won't watch it, right? They won't do it. And I'm guilty of that. I do that all the time. If I know for a fact I'm going to be the same person whether I watch this video or not, I'm not going to waste 15 minutes of my time. My time is precious, guys. I have eyebrows to draw on. I have parrots to play with. I have things to do, right? Check your body language and your attitude as well. Even if on the inside you're like, this is the most infuriating conversation I've ever had in my life, because trust me, sometimes it is. Chill out. They want that reaction out of you. And even if they don't want that reaction, even if they didn't come forward and say, I'm going to get this reaction, they feel a sense of security in getting that reaction out of you. And that will only set them back in their efforts to understand you, right? Like, I don't like talking to Sydney because she gets so emotional. She gets so emotional, right? That's the one I get all the time is, you're so emotional. It's like, no, I have gigantic eyeballs and a face that doesn't lie. That's a big difference between that and being emotional, but thank you, right? But if you're calm, if you're level-headed, if you listen to their conversations, if you respond according to what they said, not what you had pre-prepared in your mind, and sometimes all it takes is repeating what they said back to them, and that's enough to put them on pause. And I always offer the caveat, if I'm misquoting you, please correct me, because sometimes they'll correct you with a slightly different opinion. And you're like, oh, got it. Okay, so that's what you're saying. Knowing full well that that wasn't what they were saying until they heard it back to them. And then they wanted to make a little amendment in there, right? Like, except in this case. Or I mean, like, unless, and you're like, you were speaking in absolutes 5 minutes ago, but now suddenly it's, well, there's caveats there, right? So if we drop the idea that there's a winner and a loser, if we drop the idea that you get to see the final product, the fruits of your labor right in front of your face, you're probably not. In fact, they're probably going to make it seem like they didn't change their mind at all. They're going to work harder at it the more spooked they got. So if Helen, say for example, Helen is an evangelical, right? And I am Helen's cousin, and I'm sorry that you have to be my cousin, Helen. I'm so sorry. We have this conversation.
I was more insulted that you called me an evangelical. I'm in the wrong universe.
A hypothetical evangelical Helen. Let's call her Helena. There we go. Helena, the Calvinist Christian over here. If we have ended the conversation and nobody's changed their mind, then Helen's gonna be like, "Anyway, have you tried grandma's pie?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it sucks as always." And she's like, "Yeah, it tastes like cigarettes as always." You know, whatever. Maybe she won't. Maybe she likes it. I don't know. But if I've really hit Helen hard just by asking questions, just by being like, "So let me tell you what I got out of this. Here's what I got out of this." And Helen's like, "Oh, snap. That's a great question. I'm not sure how I'm gonna address that." Helen will say, "Well, at the end of the day, we're gonna agree to disagree and this and that and the other," and then go panic or Google or look it up. Like, I never want somebody to panic, but Helen's gonna get real curious. But first, she's gonna make a big show about how none of this meant anything. We agree to disagree, yada, 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 yada. And then they're gonna go either surround themselves with a bubble of people who agree with them that are like, that's your crazy cousin. She's always saying stuff like that. I don't know why you're letting it get to you. Or just start Googling stuff and looking stuff up. I might send Helen a link. I might be like, "Hey, sorry, earlier I mentioned a thing. This is where it came from. I just wanted you to know I wasn't making it up." I always quantify it as like, "This is my source in case you want to check it out. This is evidence of what I was telling you about earlier." Because if you tell somebody to watch it, they won't watch it. But if you're like, "Hey, I just wanted to make sure you know I wasn't making this up. Here's the thing earlier, do with it what you will." They might actually watch it. They might actually listen to it or send it to somebody else who does, right? Like, "Oh, my cousin showed me this. What do you think?" Um Humanizing yourself is very helpful. You like, I'm a human being. Helen, I'm your cousin, right? I have kooky ideas, right? But I'm your cousin. Or one of the things that people who are religious get a lot of flack for is people say all they use are thoughts and feelings. All they use are thoughts and feelings. They don't have any facts. All these then come at them with thoughts and feelings and stories, right? You can have facts, but they've heard it all. They've heard it all. It's gonna go bloop, it's gonna go right. So have it, but also have your stories and your thoughts and your feelings. As somebody who does storytelling, I love to put personal anecdotes in my conversations, right? I mean, you've seen me do it at least twice where I'm like, so say, for example, Helen is my cousin. I'm not saying, well, NBC says, well, MSNBC, so, whatever. Well, Fox News says, well, this and that, the other. Well, I'm saying, okay, let me give you a picture. In this scenario, this is a thing and this is a thing. Let's say that you take the exact same ideas you've been trying to cram into the conversation, but like you feel like your head's going to explode, and you set up anecdotal stories for them to get your point across. People learn and absorb information in different ways. And a lot of times they won't understand an idea until you make it personal, right? So you say, like, you think that gays are going to hell? And they're like, "Yeah, that's what the Bible says." And you're like, "Okay, and there's nothing that they can do to not go to hell." And they're like, "Not according to the Bible." And you're like, "So, Robert that we went to college with, he's gay, right? Do you remember that time that he ran that, bakery fundraiser for the children's cancer research? And do you remember how he was always the nicest person at every party to like welcome all the young kids and he didn't drink and he offered them like non-alcoholic? He's going to hell, you think? I'm just baseline. Do you think that he "Oh, well, I don't think so." Yeah, I don't think so either. So we agree that there can be a type of person who, even though they're gay, they also don't go to hell because they're maybe a good person. Sometimes that's all it takes, is just putting a personal spin on it in a way that they either have to say, "Yes, I think my dear friend Robert is going to hell," or "No, no way. I don't think God would send that person to hell." Okay. What is it about them that you think would save them? Is it because they're a Christian? Is it because they do good things? What is it that you think is the thing that is saving them from hell that's sending all the other gay people to hell? And then it's like, okay, what about Robert's boyfriend? He was there for all that stuff too. Is he? Oh, he's not. Okay. So, in your personal opinion, what is it that is saving Robert and his boyfriend from hell that is damning everybody else from hell? Even if the only answer to that question is, I've decided there are actually caveats that might keep that from being a 100% done deal, that's all you need. You don't need them to say, "I proclaim that I no longer believe." It's like, no, no. you know what? Let's agree that there's something someone can do, even if they're gay, to keep from going to hell. Great, right? Excellent. That's we both agree on that. And something I also like to do is point out all the things we have in common. I'll be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, so it seems like we agree on this, we agree on that, we agree," and even if there's 51 other things we didn't agree on, I always highlight what we agree on because it's like, "Okay, so see, like, we have a lot of things in common." It makes you wonder what else we have in common, right? Probably a lot more. Let's talk about it. Because 'Cause you'll find that a lot of people agree on things like, we don't want everyone in our country to suffer. We can agree, hopefully, right? We all think that people being in so much debt that they can't live is an awful thing. Okay. We probably disagree on what to do with it, but that's fine. We agree on that. Like, nobody should be in so much debt because of maybe getting sick that they can't continue to live. Great. We agree on that. We agree that there is something a gay person can do to not go to hell. Great. Like, I happen to not believe in hell at all, and you happen to believe in hell, but like, we both agree on that, right? That in this scenario. And that's sometimes all that it takes to get somebody's mind to change. But it takes these conversations and it takes these discussions and just asking people the right questions or repeating back to them what they said in order to really get those cogs turning. Because decisions have to be made by people themselves in order to be effective, right? We've all seen it. We've all seen it. We've all seen the person whose parents won't stop telling them they're fat and they never lose weight. Then, when they're an adult living on their own and it's their choices, their money, their abilities, suddenly they're doing great. They're so much healthier because nobody's screaming at them that they're fat all the time, right? What are they going to do? Ignore those people and probably, like in my case, when I was younger, eat your feelings, right? That's what I always did. If somebody wants to go back to school, that has to be their idea. Their parents or their family can nag them and nag them and nag them all the time about going back to school. Those are the people that drop out 25 times because they start going back because they're sick of the nagging and then they drop out because they're not there because they want to be. Just like health decisions, changing jobs, fitness decisions, dietary decisions, right? Those things have to be someone's idea. Deconstruction is the same way. I'm not out here to make an army of atheists, right? I'm not out here to proselytize to people in the same way that I don't enjoy being proselytized to and cornering them until they admit God's not real. Like, say it louder. Like, I don't have time for that. I'm exhausted. Do you see these bags under my eyes? No, because I have great lights. But if I didn't, you'd see them. Um, I'm out here to just ask that question, plant that seed. If they wanna come back and ask me, they're welcome to come back and ask me. They probably won't because they don't want me to think I won. They'll probably go find those video resources, those debate resources, those podcast resources, but they're already thinking about it when they go looking for that stuff. They very likely won't come back to me because they're always going to have that, like, "Mm, she can't know she won," like, "Oh, well, I don't want her to think that she blah, 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 blah," right? Which is totally fine. But they know how to reach me if they feel like they can. They have one more person they can reach out to, even if it's just to send that deconstruction meme to, right? Never mentioning the conversation again. You'd be shocked at how many evangelical friends of mine now wordlessly, without an explanation, send me really funny deconstruction atheist memes. We don't say a word. I don't say, "Oh my God, you're an atheist now." Like, nope, nope. I just, haha, share it to my story. That's a funny meme, right? They'll never come back and say, like, "Oh, that conversation we had," or, "Oh, because of your podcast." No, no, no. They have to, they probably, maybe they don't even make that connection that I was the first person that they had that conversation with. But now they're exploring these ideas they wouldn't have explored if I'd just jumped and attacked and dove in and been like, "Oh, so here's all the reasons why you're dumb. I'm going to keep spouting arguments at you that have nothing to do with the responses you're saying because I pre-planned this argument in my head ages ago by watching videos online that I want to be just like." Or you can humanize yourself and say, "I'm just going to ask them questions that'll make them think. I'm not going to hope they have this triumphant moment in their head in front of me. They're probably not going to. Even if they do, they're not going to show it. They're going to wait until they get home to have their existential crisis. And they're probably never going to reach back out to me to follow up on these topics, but they might follow up on those topics. All because the very first experience they ever had with somebody who was not a Christian, or in my case, was an atheist, asked the right questions, listened to them, responded to them, and did not attack. But it was still a debate. Thoughts, comments, questions?
Okay. We have several questions, and before we go to those, I have to ask, can we see the parrots?
I'll bring a parrot. Hold on one second.
Outstanding. I love it.
It'll take me just a couple minutes.
No worries.
I got a
I
kid
think it
from
was really funny too that some people thought that it was carrots, and I think
Mm.
Rob was wondering why you were telling us that you have to spend so much time with carrots. So now we need to see evidence that it was actually parrots
It'd
and
be
it's
really
not.
great if Sydney had a parrot named Carrot.
I love that. I love that. A little garden of them.
Little orange parrot named Carrot.
Kind of excited about this. I'm trying to think of all the pets that we've had on RFRX. We've had, most recently, I think we had snakes. We had Matt
Yes.
Dillahunty snakes and Arden snakes. And then we've had bunnies.
Bunnies are always,
Had
yeah.
dogs.
We have chickens that show up
Chickens,
in the chat. I mean, I have my cats that like to show
pets.
up.
We have some fish that I'm seeing today.
Yep.
Oh,
Oh.
they're there.
This is
Oh.
Picasso and
Oh.
Bluey and Willa. Willa's our oldest
Oh.
one.
Now, what species are these? Tell us
These
about
are
them.
green cheek conures.
Mhm.
Picasso is a yellow-sided green cheek conure. He's got a bunch of rainbow colors. He's got like blue and yellow and green, red. He's considered a high red because that means he's got bright red or something. Willa is a black cap green cheek conure. She's got like a little Shakespeare vibe going with her neck.
Aw.
And then Bluey is a turquoise green cheek conure. So there you go.
They're beautiful. They're
They're
so
so cute.
colorful.
Thank you. Willa is 7, Picasso is almost 2, and Bluey was born in February.
How long did they live for?
25 to 35 years. So
Wow,
they're
that is a
They're a
commitment.
commitment.
they are. Yep.
Wow.
They live longer than children. You can't send them away.
But you can put them in a cage when you're sick of their shit.
Yeah,
there you go.
yes, you
Do
can.
they stay in one enclosure together, or do they like to have their private space?
So we have an aviary, so they all have their own cage where they can go if they're like overstimulated or they want to sleep. So Bluey and Picasso share a cage. Willa gets her own cage, but the aviary is all one big space where we have 10 birds where they all live together. They cohabitate, they do their thing, they climb, they fly. But at night, everybody goes to bed and they get covered up and they have their own like private space so they can go and feel their feelings whenever they need to alone.
So
Sydney,
are
this
these
is a good place to plug your charity that you're part of, that Save Parrots.
Yes. So my podcast is Growing Up Fundy. And on growingupfundypodcast.com, you can buy merch from my Budgement Day line. It's got one of our little budgies on the front, and any merch that you buy from the Budgement Day line, all the proceeds go to the parrot rescue that helped us rescue our parrots. It's the I always forget what the name is. It's the Exotic Avian Sanctuary of Tennessee. So
wow,
they've hooked us up with all but I think 4 of our birds. So they're a great organization. We can't have like cockatoos and the big ones, so we donate money to the big ones so they're the ones that live like 80 years. So they're a fantastic organization. They save a lot of birds. They introduce us to Willa and all of our other birds, so we love them.
I
And
love that.
I guess our limit is 10, so I've been told by not me. So
seems arbitrary to me.
Yeah. Which I think is rude, but whatever.
I'm sure you'll be able to have a productive conversation about that at some point in the future.
With birds, because they can talk.
We have a debate about it.
Yes.
There you go.
Do your birds ever debate back with you?
So Willa likes to say, why? To no matter what I tell her. She's like, why? Or if you get like if she asks you why a million times and you're like, I don't know, she'll go, wow, with like attitude. She'll go, okay, like you're being emotional. Ugh, she's the worst example of a debater. So
No, I kind of like it.
I dig
there
it.
you go.
That's
Thanks.
excellent. Well, where else can people find you besides that?
Yeah, they
Can you
can
share
find me
your other
on
links?
YouTube. I have a channel, Sydney. I'm Sydney Davis Jr. with two juniors on all platforms. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Patreon, Facebook. I'm the same on every platform. You can also find Growing Up Fundy on growingupfundypodcast.com. It's also on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. So if you prefer Spotify, Apple, Amazon podcasts, it's all on there. You can go to the website as well. You can find me at sydneydavisjr.com. Yeah, you can find me any platform that exists. I'm very likely on, except Google Plus. I don't think I ever set up a Google Plus.
Okay.
I
If
have
And
people are
been
still
on Sydney's program, and I can say that she is a very good interviewer, and I really enjoy. She's very funny and smart, and like I'm giving compliments because I want people to go like and subscribe and do all the things.
thanks.
yeah,
Yeah.
Thank
yeah,
you.
I can definitely tell that you are a teacher. You have taught this before. That was very good.
Thanks. Thanks. It also helps to have your ADHD medicated. That's a big
It does. It
it
helps
does.
helps a lot.
It does. If we'd had the same conversation 3 years ago, may not have gone the same way. I don't know, TBD, but definitely
Yeah,
helps.
you are very well organized. And I want to ask you our first question that Rob just asked in the chat as well. You have an interesting suffix on your name, Junior Junior. What
Yes.
is the story behind that?
So I have like 19 stories I tell people, but the real one is kind of boring. I'll just warn you. So I started stand up when I was in 11th grade. I was 16 years old. And at the time, nowadays this is not the case, but at the time there were only two teenagers who did it and there was only like two places we could go that were under 21. And so we got to do an interview on Chicago Public Radio because it was like so weird that teenagers were doing stand up. He was younger than me. I think he was 15 or 14 at the time. And before the show started, the DJ or the host, I suppose I should say, said, "What's your stage name?" And I was like, "What is that?" And he's like, "What's your comedy name that you only use for comedy? It's not your real name." And my favorite movie at the time had a dog named Sammy Davis Jr. Jr. And so I was like, just off the cuff, I was like, Sydney Davis Jr. Jr. And he was like that. It's got a ring to it. Then I put it on Facebook. And once you put something on Facebook, it's eternal. It's been
Yeah,
that way
it's
for
yeah.
16 years.
You're stuck
So.
now forever.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
fair
But I tell
enough.
people all sorts of stories. I have so many different made up versions.
I like it. I mean, it goes to your profession as a storyteller. You kind of have to. You're obligated.
Pretty much. Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Well, that's great. Okay, and we have more questions for you too.
Mhm.
Let's see. We'll get going on these. Someone else was asking, and you might have already addressed this a little bit, but you might have more stories for us. We'll see. Not stories, but explanations. Makes it sound like you're making it up, but anyway, what are some of the things you learned you believed that you didn't realize you believed before doing some of the debates? And I think you called it something like IPDA, or
Yeah,
what was
it
that
stands
process?
for International Public Debate Association. There's a bunch of
Okay.
different types of
Mhm.
debate. That's just the one that I was a part of, the best one. So for example, I was one of those people who would make a declarative statement. But then if you ask me why, or you ask me like where I got that idea, or you presented something that didn't make my point make a lot of sense, I would say, like, I don't have time to talk about this right now. Like, now on Facebook we say like, "Oh, I've got to get back to work. You should try it." Those kind of I would always come up with some reason why like I don't feel like you're actually going to receive my answer, so I'm not going to waste my time. One of those. When it turns out I didn't know. I was parroting, my apologies for the slur,
Oh,
um, ideas that I had just been told. And I had never before debate been confronted about these ideas. I had just been allowed to say it because everybody else agreed, right? Or so I thought. Turns out a lot of people were just being really quiet because they felt unwelcome in these spaces at the time, right? So for example, one of the ones I can remember was Obama Romney. I was like, well, I'm going to vote for Romney. And people are like, well, why are you voting for Romney? And I'm like, because Obama's bad. And they're like, "Well, why is Obama bad?" Well, clearly you're a fan, so anything I say is not gonna matter to you, but I just want you to know you can vote for Obama and I can vote for Romney. To date, why I don't know why Obama was bad. I have no idea. It was just I was from the South and I was told that Mitt Romney was what we were voting for, right? Nowadays, I cannot even tell you what Romney stood for. I have no idea. Don't remember. No idea. I can tell you a bunch of Obama's policies, right? But to date, I have no idea what like Romney could have said anything and I would not have known it. I just knew that I wasn't supposed to vote for Obama. Just that sort of thing. Um, and so it was those kind of ideas that even if I had still decided I agreed, at least I knew why. At least I
Mm,
had evidence to back up why it was, because that's just as bad. Even if I'd been like, "Oh, I'm gonna vote for Obama," and then people are like, "Well, why don't you vote for?" Because Romney's bad. If I don't know why Romney's bad, that's also a problem, right? If I don't know why Obama should be voted for, that's a problem. That's just as bad as saying he's bad without knowing why. You know what I'm saying? So like having evidence to support what it is if you truly believe it. It's that word believe. If you believe something, that means that you've been presented with evidence to the antithesis. You've done your research, you've looked into it, and you've decided, you know what, at the end of the day, I still am going to vote for Mitt Romney or I'm still going to vote for Obama or whatever. But if you've never looked into it, that's not belief. That's just either regurgitating what you've heard or you've been coerced, like a lot of religious institutions, you've been coerced into saying this is what you believe, or else you're going to hell. Like punishment for not believing something is not real belief, if that makes sense. Like
mhm,
just fearing punishment. So those were just even like I remember being anti marijuana. It's like, why? Cuz. Why? Smoking's bad for you. What if I told you that smoking a doob isn't the same as smoking? It doesn't matter. It's smoking your lungs. It's bad for you. Don't miss me with it. It's like, okay, so what if you eat it? No, it's not the same. I don't want to talk about this. Like the drugs are drugs. It's a gateway drug, right? Like, girl, do you hear yourself? At least no. Even if I'd had reasons, at least those would have been reasons, right? You can have bad takes and it's still a legitimate take, right? You can have a bad opinion and it's still an opinion based on what you consider fact. Just stuff like that, where you're like, it wasn't until I was forced to spend an hour researching the opposite and being convincing that I realized, "Oh, this actually isn't awful. Interesting. I may wanna look into this," right? Sometimes that's
Yeah,
all it takes.
makes sense. And you're not going to go look into it if somebody made you feel stupid when you
Right.
discussed it.
Right, exactly. If my high school bully was pro marijuana, I'd probably still not like marijuana. I wouldn't know why other than it gives me PTSD, right? But like, you know what I mean? Like if every time he beat my ass he smelled like weed, I'd probably be, like, but at least I'd have a reason, right? At least I would know why, even if it didn't make a lot of sense.
That makes a lot of sense. All right. What else do we have, Helen? We've got a few more questions, don't we?
Yep. So for new atheist skeptics, how do you avoid being smug, aggressive, wanting to save their friends or family members from their ideas, which they no longer agree with?
So from the perspective of the new atheist, right? Of
Yes.
the
Yeah.
new okay.
Yeah. You have taken off the shackles, and I am now a
Yeah.
skeptic. Let me
Yes.
go save my family.
So if I, for my personal opinion, right? I'm not a doctor, I'm not a sociologist. I would say be who you've always been. Don't be any different. And if they want to talk about it, talk about it. If they invite you to church, no thanks. I'll see you when you get back. Start small. Because it's when you come out of the gate swinging that they're like, this is a phase. This is a phase. Remember when you also liked Panic at the Disco and that was your whole personality? This is a phase too. Maybe that's not a phase. Maybe you still want to be that person, right? Start small. Like, be the same person you've always been with new ideas. If they start in on a conversation, don't participate, right? If they're, you know how family can be where they'll start something and then if you say anything the opposite, they're like, "We said no politics at the table." You're like, "Well, clearly politics are fine at the table. It's just got to be your politics, right?" Leave the room, walk away, ask, "Is this an opportunity for me to give my opinion?" I love doing that because my parents are always very scared on what I'm about to say, but like they'll go back and forth, they go back and forth. I just stay quiet. I don't try to argue. I just like listen, and then I say, "May I?" partake in the conversation. And if they say no, then I leave. And if they say yes, then I add my 2 cents, right? And then I say, this is what I think. But I also follow it up with what I know they're going to say. So these are my thoughts, this. Now I know y'all are going to come back and say this. I don't care. This is what I think, right? This brings me peace. Something that makes my parents crazy is when I say, I'm going to sleep great tonight, knowing that this is the truth. But by all means, if you add humor into it, it makes a big difference. If I were to come in and be like, no, see, because F you, because this is the truth, this with the exact same information. But instead, I'm like, may the liberals speak. May I have the floor for one moment? I literally have a gavel ready to go that I sometimes pull out and I'm like, may I, right? Like when things get heated. But if they say no, then don't. And then remove yourself from the situation. And when they're like, why'd you leave? You're like, sorry, I thought you weren't interested in talking to me. Just cash.
That's the one I need to work on. It happens a lot in my family holiday debates. They don't want to hear from me, and I have a hard time letting that go, but
Yes.
working on shutting up more.
When they say no religion or politics, what they mean is no liberal politics, no progressive religious ideas.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah, it's a bad sign when 45 minutes into the shouting, someone ends with, I don't want to argue. Really?
Yep.
We've been arguing for an hour.
That's what we were doing. Okay, so yeah, definitely can relate. Okay, another question someone is asking is, do you have knowledge of and an opinion about street epistemology?
I love street epistemology when done correctly. When done correctly. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And I think if you watch, say, for example, Anthony Magnabosco, he does a great job. He does a phenomenal job. I have seen people who weren't ready for street epistemology try to do street epistemology. If you are ready for it, you have to be ready to be insulted, to be offended, to be dismissed. And if you know what you're like. And if you know deep down you're going to lose it if somebody says something, insults you or like disses your belief, you're not ready. And it's okay. You don't have to be ready. Street epistemology will be there when you are ready for it. But you can do more harm than good by launching too soon, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I love it. I think it's wonderful. I think street epistemology is the real life example of exactly what I'm talking about. Just make sure that you don't segue into proselytizing for atheism or proselytizing for liberalism. Don't become the same people that you don't like just because you think your ideas are better than them.
Amen. Ramen. Whatever.
The Church of Bird declares tweet.
Yes.
I think that's what you would say in the Church of Bird.
That makes sense.
Actually, she would say the F word, probably. She does.
I mean, that's fair. That's allowed here.
I mean, I say that,
words.
Even
fuck.
when I say fuck all the time.
Yeah.
So, do we have any more fucking questions, Helen?
I think we have one more fucking question, goddammit. Is there value in having convos or conversations for those that are not cool on the slang about skepticism, etc., if you're not very educated on the subject?
How else are you supposed to get educated on the subject, right? The main thing is admit when you don't know. That's the main thing. Don't be another one of those people who give like a big circular HR cyclical answer that doesn't really answer anything. Be ready to tap out and be like, great question. Like the other day, that same person I was talking to about religions called me out on something that I said, and she was right. And I was like, oh, you know what? Touche. Because I made some statement. I don't remember exactly what it was. I'll post it when it goes live, but I made some statement like, I never date this type of person. And she was like, well, that applies to me. And I was like, oh, touche. And she's like, we're having a great conversation. And I was like, nope, touche. Like, you got me. That's actually, I learned something there. We agree on nothing else, but she was right in that moment. She was like, what you just said, that applies to me. And here we are having a great conversation. And I was like, boom, done. You're right. I back down. Right. So there is a giant, massive value. But again, very much like street epistemology, it's only valuable when you're ready for for certain things. Like when you're ready to admit when you're wrong, when you're ready to admit you actually don't have the answer to something, when you're ready to be told things that you don't like, sometimes about yourself, when you're ready for people that you love to say things like, well, atheists are just a bunch of, dumb idiots and mean it and know that it applies to you, right? That's the only caveat there. There's so much value. You can read 100 books on how to play football, but that doesn't mean I'm going to put you out on the field, right? You're going to learn a lot being thrown out in the field, even though you read all those books, right? Same with street epistemology, same with having these arguments. You get better and better and better. The first few, you're probably going to be really upset. You're going to do that thing where hours later, you're like, "Oh, I should have said this. Like I should have said that." And you're going to stop doing it for a while because you have so many of those moments. It's okay. Have those moments. You're still the same person. You're learning. You know what that feels like. So now you're going to work harder to avoid that feeling.
To be fair, if you have ADHD, we're always having conversations with ourselves about things we could have said in arguments all the time.
All the time. All the time. Does not end.
Usually when you're trying to fall asleep, I imagine.
Yes, yes.
Yes. 100%.
Good time for it. Thanks, brain. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
We have one more final question before we start wrapping this stuff up. So did you want to go ahead, Car, and finish this up?
Sure. Yeah. And it's kind of a related question. You've touched on it a little bit, but I think it is a good question to kind of end on. This person was saying that they have kind of a natural aversion to anything debate adjacent because it makes them think about apologetics, which obviously they're no longer into. So it's hard to see the value personally of having conversations about faith. So, what would be the purpose of having such a conversation? Is it like to give people who are questioning a space to do that? Is it an intellectual exercise? Why would you want to have that type of conversation?
So a lot of times these conversations find you. Believe it or not, I love debating people, but I don't like debating people, right? I love debate. I love the skills I've gotten from debate. I enjoyed it when I did it for, scholarship or for school, but I actually don't like having arguments with people. Arguments find their way to you. So for somebody like that, what they might benefit from more is just knowing what they would say in certain instances, right? So maybe you can Google the top 25 most popular questions Christians ask atheists, or the number one most common questions atheists ask Christians, and just know what your answer would be to those questions. And hopefully, in your case, you never have to pull them out. You never have to use them. But knowing what those are ahead of time and feeling prepared and being able to answer those questions, there's no better feeling than when you answer somebody's question and they look satisfied or intrigued. Like, oh, interesting. You will learn to love having these conversations when you're prepared, when you're ready, when you feel respected, when you feel communicated with. So at the time, maybe you're like, I never want to, this sounds like my nightmare. Hopefully, you never have to. But you can prepare what your answers to those questions would be in a theoretical scenario that they come up. That way, on the occasion that they happen to you, because that's how these go, they happen to you, these conversations. It's usually not a consensual experience. You are come upon with these kinds of conversations, usually unexpectedly when you're just trying to mind your own business, right? But knowing what your answers would be and why, one, you might change your answer. You might think you know your answer would be, but through doing your research, you're like, oh, that's also a great argument that I never thought about. I'm going to write that one down too. You might learn yourself, or just having them ready to go so you can use them when you need to is half the battle. And knowing that if somebody were to ask you those questions, you would at least be able to answer the baseline question and walk away, peace out, get out of there, take your food to go, whatever. That's okay. We don't have to be these people that are walking around looking for a fight. And that's what a lot of religious people think we are. They think we're out here just like, I'm going to get in your space, which is ironic to say the least, but that's a whole other conversation. Just knowing that about yourself may teach you a little bit about yourself, and having those answers ready is never a bad thing, even if you never use them.
Well, I think that you have given us a lot to think about and a lot of tools to use. That was super helpful. I'm definitely going to go back and review later because I thought that was a lot of good stuff. So thank you for sharing that with
Thank
us.
you. Thank you. Also, something I want to highlight is I appreciate when people reach out to me with things they don't agree. So
Mhm.
I'm going to put my email in the chat if that's okay.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if you
Absolutely.
heard something that you felt uncomfortable voicing a disagreement to, or say, for example, I saw this work for this person, but you're saying that doesn't work. Usually that's a really good learning opportunity. So I'm going to put my chat, I'm trying to type with one hand. Let's see, is that working? Okay. And feel free to email me. Just hang on to it. Email me at any time, and I'm happy to answer your questions, hear your rebuttals, give like if you have scenarios, if you're going somewhere and you're like, what do I do to prepare for this? Reach out to me. Ask me questions. I'm happy to answer them because I feel like if you make a statement publicly, you should have to answer it. You should have to be confronted with people who disagree. And so if that's something you feel, let me know. I'm happy to answer it.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's great. Yeah, and I loved it. I really enjoy listening to your stories
Mhm.
and you're just I don't know, it's I
You have
really
a
feel like
big
I learned a
brain,
lot in a
Sydney.
short
It's a
amount of
big brain
time
stuff.
from what you shared.
Thanks. I've had a giant head my whole life, so I'm
I-
glad there's brain in
yeah,
there somewhere.
yeah, big brain.
That's
You
great.
said big
And
brain
great
things.
eyebrows as well.
Yeah. Also, so are they AI?
They are pencil. It's a
Pencil?
combination of like
Yeah.
3 colors. The amount of time I spend just blending this little inner corner every single
Mhm.
day, it takes a while. My makeup would be half as long to do if I had real eyebrows.
Wow. So
Yeah.
they're entirely drawn on.
They are from beginning to end. I don't know if you can see, my arm hair is like invisible. So is my eyebrow hair.
Ah, okay.
Like it is clear. It is
Wow.
literally, it's not even blonde. It's just clear. Yeah. Yep.
Wow. I would not have known. I would have
Thank
guessed
you.
real if I had voted in that poll.
Thank
S-
you.
Well
The
done.
makeup
Well
makes it
done.
real, Cara. Makeup
Yeah,
makes it real.
that's true. You know what? You're right. Who am I to say what's real and what's not real? Makeup
That's true.
eyebrows are real. They exist. We see them. Okay. On that note, let's move on to wrapping up here with some final comments. Don't forget to join us next week, same time, same channel. Next week we have Thomas Westbrook, who you might know as Holy Kool-Aid, who will be joining us to round out our last episode before the Halloween episode. So stick with us for a couple of spooky weeks. It should be fun. And if between now and then you need more RFRX in your life, check us out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts and you can watch the older episodes. And as always, you can email us at rfrx@recoveringfromreligion.org. And you can check out more content on our blog or our podcast. And Helen, where can
There's a
people find
chicken.
us on the social medias?
So I know that all of you are super smart social media people. So we are on the Facebook. So if you are on Mark Zuckerberg's cultish site that we're all a part of, the Book of Faces, we have a main page on there. We also have a support group page on the Facebook. So there are volunteers that are on both of those pages that moderate and offer support and resources and all the things. On X, or the others formerly known as Twitter. We are on there as well, where our socials go up and things that are going on with recovering from religion. Also, too, we are on Instagram and we are on TikTok. So if you please do all the things like, subscribe, star, share, all the things, everything that's going on with recovering from religion. We have people that do social media stuff and put stuff on there. So please do those things. Okay, we are wrapping up. Time to read the final poll. Now,
Wait, one thing.
Yeah,
okay,
go ahead.
Sydney, yes, go.
There are 2 chickens right there. Bob
Yeah.
has 2 chickens.
Yes.
I just wanted to highlight
Yeah,
that
many
there
more
are
than
more
2.
birds.
This is
He has
our
many
bird
chickens.
episode. I
I
love
think
it.
this is like the record number of birds I've ever seen on one live stream. I'm sorry. Continue.
Love it. We love those
So,
chickens. They're
So
regular
this is
attendings.
our exit poll. We do this poll to find out more information about how you found us and how you find this content. So question number one, this program was relevant to me. 1, nope, crappy. I don't know. I'm here. This was not relevant. 5, best presentation ever. This was so relevant. I'll come back. 2 to 4, search your feelings. Number 2, the speaker was clear and understandable. 1, banana phone, talking to tin cans, couldn't hear shit. Oh my God, what happened? Number 5, it was like the person was standing right next to me. It was fantastic. They were great. 2 to 4, adjust your volumes on your computers, people. Not my problem. 3, I will definitely attend future programs like this. 1, nope, terrible. I will never come again. This sucked. I hate it here. Number 5, yes, this was wonderful. This is the best community ever. I will definitely come in and learn and hang out at RfRX because this is the best place on the internet. 2 to 4, search your feelings. Number 4, how did you find RfRX tonight? Through our RfR online community Slack space, through a meetup event, through Facebook, through X or the Instagrams, through Discord, or through the RfR website or other, which means that you were psychically told by a bird to come here and attend this talk. And that wraps us up. So now I'm going to turn it up to our wonderful president and founder, Dr. Del Rey, to give his final thoughts and opinions on tonight's talk and anything else he wants to talk about. So go ahead, Dr. Rey.
Hey, Sydney, have we met before? I thought we met at like the American Atheist Convention. I thought, was that where it was?
We met in St. Louis just the other day, this summer.
St. Louis, right. It was the SSA conference. That's right. I knew it had been fairly recently, but I couldn't remember it for the life of me. Anyway, thank you so much. This has been a great talk. It's very entertaining. I've been sitting here really appreciating your perspective. But by the way, did you know that Scientific American had an article about 3 months ago on why parrots are taking over the world?
Believe it. I believe
it.
it.
That's the title, and why they're doing it, because they're so damn adaptive.
They're so smart.
Smart. They've become quite a nuisance in some countries and some places. But anyway,
yeah, in Tennessee, you can't have a Quaker parrot because they're considered an invasive species.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I'll just announce here, and this is official to everybody, I'm now officially scared of Sydney because if I ever had a debater, I would probably end up being a Baptist. Just if I had to take the wrong side. You've got great skills. I appreciate how you've shared them with us today. And I love how you've been teaching us good listening skills and good questioning skills. So many people don't know either one. They don't know how to listen and they don't know how to question. And the best questions are questions that don't lead the questionee, the person you're asking the question of. And we really put a lot of emphasis on this in our agent training. But I'm telling you, every one of our agents could still use practice and still use development. I would almost recommend that every agent rewatch what Sydney's talked about here today. Because
thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever looked at or chatted in or tried to see how we do our chat line or helpline, but we've really put a lot of questions. We encourage people to use street epistemology, but you really are going a step or two farther. You're really putting some technique meat to the bones of questioning and respectful discussions, which I just think are hard for many people to do because we just can't let go of our emotions, and
yes,
we just can't. So, and I'll be the first to admit it. I've only done one major debate in my life. I did not enjoy it. I think I won. I'm not sure. I mean, they took a vote at the end and I won by a few votes, but obviously I didn't overwhelm the other person. I just don't enjoy it all that much.
Right. Right. It's a skill we don't want to have, but we have to have.
Yeah. And I think the key is, I think good questions show curiosity. And it's not a fake curiosity. If I'm asking a good question, I'm genuinely curious about how you will answer. I may have my own opinions. I almost always do. But I really want to help understand how your brain works. And that's hard for people to shut their own brain off long enough to listen to what other people are doing. I just thought your repeating technique is excellent. Yeah, as a psychotherapist, we're trained we're trained down to the gnat's ass how to ask good questions and use questions to help draw people out. And the only way to do that is to repeat what they heard, what you heard.
Yes.
And if you're not accurate, that's good information. Your brain's not listening very well. So it was, I think that's really important to listen. We really encourage our agents to repeat what they've heard people say. And I'll tell you, our best agents are really good at making that repeating what they've heard. And you can just see the client open up. It like only takes one time of saying, let me repeat what I think I heard you say. And they'll come right back. And boy, I'll tell you, we're off to the races then. And because they see you don't have an agenda and you're actually listening to them, that's the secret, I think, to a respectful conversation is that I'm sitting here repeating everything you said because I'm so excited that you've told us all these things.
Well, yeah, I think people prepare for everything except being listened to. They
Yeah,
prepare for everything you could possibly say to them and everything you could possibly do except listen to what they have to say. They're always shook
yeah.
when that happens.
They're shook because you actually heard them. And
Yeah.
oh, I didn't know it came out like that. Oh, you're
Yep.
right. I did say that, but I don't agree with that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing when you repeat what you heard and then you see a question mark and they say, "Oh, yeah, that's what I said," but no, I don't agree with that. Then they become their I'm gonna throw this out at you because I didn't hear you say it, but a mentor of mine many years ago used to say, "A person will not argue with their own data. Person will not argue with your own data." So if you listen to them and you repeat it back, all you're doing is giving their data back to them.
Yep.
And they generally won't argue with it. Or if they do argue with it, it's them arguing with the data that they created. It's a beautiful conundrum for the other
It is.
person to have to do. Oh yeah, that's not quite what I meant. Yeah, I like that. I thought you were doing, and I really love the fact that you're focusing on agreement many, many times. I mean, it's like I call it the 99% rule. You can say, "Hey man, you made a 99% on your test." And all the person's brain can do is think, "Oh, what's the 1% I missed?" I mean, 99%, damn, that's good. But no, our brains want to go to what we disagree with rather than the 99% we agree with. And I
Exactly.
think one of my best friends, his name is Dr. Dan Dana. You can look him up on the internet. He's the inventor of some really good mediation techniques. And many really excellent techniques in mediation focus on agreement, not on disagreement. Because most of the time people agree on most of the stuff. It's just the one or two things they don't agree on. So that anyway, I'm going off on I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm really enjoying rethinking what you said here. So
Thanks.
thanks for the plug on street epistemology. And I really like the way you said street epistemology will be there when you're ready. I've seen way too many people basically take 2 lessons in SE and go out and try and do it, and they fail.
Yes.
And when they fail, they think, well, it's the system that failed, not me. It couldn't possibly be me. I'm smart enough to learn this stuff that quick. But I am not. I've been studying this shit for decades, and I'm still not that confident sometimes. So I think we fool ourselves way too often.
And we compare
Okay.
ourselves to other people too often, I think, too.
Oh yeah, yeah. And Anthony is a very, very good friend of mine. In fact, he and I are having a conference call in a couple. He's in Iceland right now. Well, what's going on? But
Lucky bastard.
Yeah.
Without you.
Yeah. Well, I was in Iceland early August. Now he's going for 2 weeks with his wife, and I'm kind of envious. I really enjoy it. It's a wonderful, wonderful place.